When Tripwire Interactive released their co-op FPS, Killing Floor, the first one that is, in May 2009, it was widely greeted with critical acclaim. PC gamers across the board, including myself, revelled in the tight, snappy gunplay and the vast volume of vile viscera. Killing Floor was a horde-style survival FPS where a team of up to 6 players did their utmost to fend off increasingly difficult undead horrors known as specimens, or Zeds. Grabbing those Z kills earned them dosh to spend on ammo and better weapons in between each round, along with XP to level up their chosen class. It was pure co-op, firmly supported by smart enemy spawns, amazing gunplay and a varied class system with plenty of diversity. Not to mention the many difficulty levels to keep players busy in the long term, and some of them were stupendously difficult. I never finished the highest two, which were Suicidal and Hell on Earth, appropriately named, I think you'll agree. Ideally you'd have a full communicative team to clear these, although you know there's that one guy somewhere who's finished them all by himself with a knife. You just know there is, right? It's on YouTube somewhere. Each enemy in Killing Floor was distinct in its characteristics and the role they played in a match was intuitive, even for new players. In a nutshell, Killing Floor was so successful because the developers kept it simple, but they polished these simple concepts to such a blinding mirror sheen, and it didn't hurt that Tripwire supported Killing Floor with updates for years until the sequel was announced, titled, funnily enough, Killing Floor 2. Killing Floor 2 had a lengthy early access period of just over 2 years, and I will shamelessly admit that I jumped into that the first chance I got. Sleeker, shinier and shootier, Killing Floor 2 raised the bar significantly in almost every way. Not to say it was perfect right off the bat, mind you. There was a limited amount of maps available and it did get stale after a few hours on repeat. Performance wasn't exactly amazing either, but it was the beta after all, so they did have some wiggle room when it came to criticism. I think a lot of people also forgot about the years of development it took the first Killing Floor to achieve all the content it currently has. But all that happened almost 4 years ago. 2020 might be a god-awful year so far, but how is our old friend holding up in these uncertain times? Well, pretty fucking good actually.
Let's make sure of that.
I've been playing Killing Floor 2 on and off since early access, coming back every now and then to see what's new or when I get the itch for a frantically fast, high quality shooter that isn't too salty. The game is really bloody good, simple as that, and if all you're here for is a recommendation, there it is, off you go and watch out for them stalkers. For the rest of you that want to know a little bit more, hang about and I'll try and elaborate. Just like the first game, Killing Floor 2 is a wave-based survival FPS where you battle barbaric beasties with lead, steel and heavy metal music. In between each of these rounds, all players have a chance to visit the trader and spend their dosh. What? That's what it's called, dosh. The monster roster has been expanded from the first game and even more have been added over the last 4 years. The visual design of the Zeds has drastically improved from its predecessor and they're even more distinct from each other in both a visual and auditory form. There's the obvious texture quality jump that comes with a 6-year gap and a change of engine, but the actual designs are much more fitting and daunting. Skrakes and flesh pounds have been hitting the deadlifts and are now murderous fucking titans about 3 times the size of you. Sirens look genuinely horrific now, and across the board Zeds just look like vulgar monstrosities you can't wait to put down with a shotgun to the face. The sound design of these monsters is also fantastically good. Bigger Zeds like the Skrake and Fleshpound make these intimidating, brain-rumbling roars whenever they spawn in. It serves as a handy warning as well as a brilliant tone setter for the battle to come. After just a few hours of play, you'll come to recognise the sound of almost every single Zed, and identifying them by their sounds alone, especially with a good headset on, becomes second nature. This is important to the gameplay as Killing Floor 2 is very, very good at making sure you're never quite safe. There is always somewhere the enemies can spawn in to get to your flank, and if you think you can just put your back up to a wall and turtle up, you are sorely mistaken, my friend. That's one surefire way to get completely shredded in no time at all. Purely for the sake of completeness, a quick rundown of the Zeds is in order. It's generally agreed that there are 3 tiers of beastie: the weak, the medium, and the big, or the heavies. For the weak Zeds, there's the cyst, a very squishy little guy who isn't an issue by himself, but he will latch onto you if he gets too close. Very distracting. The alpha clot behaves basically the same as the cyst, but can both dish out and take a little bit more damage. They have a chance to spawn in as a special variant too, named the Rioter, who offensively behaves the same, but can rally nearby Zeds to buff them and has thick metal armour across their head and chest, tanking a whole load of bullets before dying. Slashers are essentially ninja cysts, with agile moves to both dodge gunfire and close the space between you. The stealthy Stalker is an almost invisible opponent, betrayed only by the occasional shimmering flicker. Gotta keep your eyes peeled for these wicked wenches, as they will sneak up on you, guaranteed. Thankfully, the Commander class passively reveals them in an area around, which is really handy, as well as the characters mentioning when they saw a shimmer if the Stalker's nearby. Again, audio design feeding into gameplay. The incredibly fragile crawlers are spider-like cretins that slither from vents and all dark crevices. Designed to flank and overwhelm in numbers, they are most definitely fodder, but will still chip away at your armour if you ignore them. These guys have a special variant too, the Elite Stalker, which explodes into a cloud of smelly, corrosive gas when shot. Delicious. The last weak Zed is the Gore Fast, but don't make the mistake of thinking this dude is actually weak. The damage this guy can deal out is pretty spooky, and he's by far the tankiest of these lesser Zeds. These guys are easily distinguishable by their greater height and the rusty blade protruding from the elbow. Gorefasts have a chance, depending on difficulty setting, to spawn as a Gore Fiend, a tougher and more deadly version with 2 blades for arms instead of 1. Uh-oh. That's all the weak Zeds. They mainly serve to pad out the waves of enemies, but can still pose unique challenges and screw your day up if left unchecked, especially in those elite varieties. The medium Zeds have a more direct impact, requiring some specific methods to stop them melting your entire team. You've got the lovely sounding Bloat, who's this huge, tanky boy wielding 2 meat cleavers. I wouldn't worry about the cleavers though, I'd worry about the nasty, sticky bile he'll chuck up on you, doing damage over time and obscuring your vision badly. Headshots are the name of the game when taking down a Bloat, although you should apply that rule to pretty much every enemy. The Siren is a royal pain in the arse for a multitude of reasons. Not only does she scream really loud and make my poor little ears hurt, but her huge AoE damage also destroys any projectiles. This includes grenades and rockets. She sucks, but is relatively fragile, can't deal any other types of damage, and does go down in a good few headshots. So far, most enemies are only a real issue when they get all up in your face, but the Husk is a long-range sniper, firing exploding fireballs from afar. Fortunately, they glow bright orange and are exceptionally easy to identify, and should be made a target before your armour is melted via incendiary artillery. The EDAR Zeds aren't exactly specimens, just dickhead robots that come in 3 different flavours. A ranged bomber, similar to the Husk, a blaster who fires rapid laser projectiles, and the Trappers, which stun a player with a short-range taser. All arseholes. Headshots are a bad idea here. Instead, blast away at the chest to reveal a power core that takes 250% damage and stuns all nearby Zeds when the EDAR goes boom. Something I didn't know before researching this video is that EDAR spawns similarly to other elites I mentioned earlier. They replace a Husk or a Stalker with a set chance depending on the difficulty level. The more you know. The heavy Zeds are complete game changers. If one strolls onto the scene, the whole gang needs to be aware of it and focus accordingly. Many matches have come to an abrupt and violent end when one of these fuckers picks an unorganised team apart one by one with brutal efficiency. Fortunately, there are only 2 heavies, but boy can they wreck face. The Scrake is a towering, muscle-bound lumberjack professional, so dedicated to his career that he's got a chainsaw for an arm. If you're careful, you can leave these Scrakes to the end of the wave as they walk fairly calmly towards a player at a pace that can initially be outrun. However, if you start unloading into its head, it'll enrage very quickly and come gunning for the nearest ally. As with the other heavy Zed, a team must focus on bringing them down together. Speaking of the other heavy... the Fleshpound, the biggest bastard in the whole game and absolutely the most dangerous. Dauntingly tanky and absurdly powerful, this moving mountain is a wrecking ball and your skull is the condemned building, primed to be demolished. There's this little yellow thing on their chest, and when it flicks from yellow to red, the Fleshpound goes apeshit. Again, focusing fire to bring down the threat ASAP is key, especially on the harder difficulties where health scales up and so does their damage. There are some smaller, weaker variants of the Fleshpound called the Quarter Pounder, which I thought was pretty funny honestly, and they serve basically the same function, just with a lot less health and damage. It's worth mentioning that each enemy has their own weaknesses and strengths against different types of weaponry, but this video isn't a guide, it's just a bit of a geeky examination. This entire roster, combined with the impressive amount of current classes, offers a scrumptious cocktail of tactics, twitch reflexes, and wonderful carnage. When Killing Floor 2 came into early access, there were only 4 classes, or perks as they're actually known in-game. There was the Berserker, who was a melee focus perk, with extra movement speed and health buffs. The Support, an ammo-providing shotgun wielder, who can more than hold their own. The Commando, a traditional assault rifle expert, capable of spotting cloaked Zeds for the team and showing a health bar for enemies. And there was the Medic, proficient in using weapons specifically catered to healing allies when they need it the most. Since early access, along with a truckload of maps, we've now got the Demolitionist. Pretty self-explanatory on this one. Likes things that go boom and they take out many lesser Zeds in a single blast, while also having access to missile launchers that do huge damage to large Zeds and bosses. The Firebug, an area of effects and damage over time king in the right hands, utilising fire and flame to melt lesser Zeds by the dozen and provide steady damage to the bigger, tanky ones. I personally just can't get along with the Firebug, but I've never been a fan of damage over time builds in any game. I like things to die quickly and cleanly. Next up is the Gunslinger, one of my personal favourites. Focusing purely on slinging pistols around, usually akimbo style, this class is basically the John Wick roleplay. The damage a Gunslinger can kick out when unloading 2 Magnum revolvers into a Scrake's face is just joyous. The Sharpshooter is a high skill cap class, rewarding high accuracy and headshots. Making the best use of semi-automatic rifles and bolt-action snipers, in capable hands the Sharpshooter can drop even the biggest Zeds before the rest of the team even see them. The Sharpshooter can be very hard to master, specifically as it requires a high level of accuracy for those sweet headshots. Another one of my favourite classes is the SWAT class, proficient in the use of submachine guns and absolutely mowing through lesser Zeds with ridiculous ease. Definitely a little lacking in the higher damage department versus the big boys, but a SWAT player can take a lot of the weight off the sharpshooters and demo guys when they're trying to catch their big game. Finally, there's the Survivalist. Honestly, I have no interest in the Survivalist at all, as they're meant to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. While they fit into pretty much any team, they don't offer a serious benefit either. Every class is a master of something, and there's always a Zed that requires that specific mastery to take down effectively. I feel like the Survivalist is just kind of there. Each perk has its own statistical boni that apply to respective class weapons, and there's a little crossover here and there, so not all weapons are absolutely exclusive to that class. More importantly, every 5 levels the perk will be able to choose a perk, I guess? These are toggleable between waves and between games, so you aren't locked into one build, and they can really make some kick-ass power-ups. So yeah, lots of perks to choose from, lots of perks in the perks to choose from too. A lot of maps. On the early access launch there were 3. Now there's 32. That's a lot of maps, and they support all the difficulty levels too. It feels like the game has much greater performance now too, and even with the most insane and gory massacres, this game doesn't drop frames that much, considering how much is happening on screen, I mean. It does drop a bit when you fire off a noob tube into a pack of squishy Zeds, but that's understandable. It's still pretty good. Now it's time that I gush about how good the animations are in Killing Floor 2. This has been something that's been present through both games, but good god, they are so sexy in this game it's like borderline gun porn. The gunshots reverberate with a meaty, bassy blast, showing visible and realistic kickback as the cocking handle smashes back and forth to eject shell casings from the rifles.
Cheating!
The shotguns feel like they could blow you 3 feet backwards every time you fire them. And the pistols are lavishly reloaded in gorgeous style.
Just like being in a fox.
Even when the game goes slow motion, which it does randomly when someone gets a nice headshot, the animation stays so smooth. You just have to play it to see what I mean. It just feels so insanely cathartic. A lot of this is thanks not only to the highly skilled animators, but to the fact that Tripwire animated this game in 200 frames per second, whereas the industry standard is usually somewhere between 30 and 60. I guess that explains why even in slow motion, they still look killer. All the amazing animation and the awesome sound work give some really good feedback when you're playing the game. The clacking sounds of all the weapons and the fleshy thuds of the rounds making contact with monster flesh. It's really good audio-visual feedback. If you're frequently hearing the sound of a Zed head exploding, then you're doing something very, very right. I think I've established that the moment-to-moment gameplay has improved in pretty much every single way, but there's a small bugbear that I'm not so hot on outside of the actual gameplay mechanics. There are obligatory microtransactions, which I'm not objectively against as the game hasn't charged for a single update since release, and devs gotta pay their mortgages. That's cool. I just think they're a little bit too dear for what they are, and consequently I haven't bought a single one of them. The value for money just isn't there for me. Don't quote me on this, but I think they did cosmetic loot boxes for a while too, but I haven't seen anything of this in the game lately. You still get free random loot boxes from this vault system, which fills up as you play matches. It's a nice little progress tracker, apart from your perk XP, and it visually shows all the dosh you've accrued. Just to be absolutely clear, these boxes that drop from the vault can be opened for free. They don't require CSGO style case keys. Killing Floor 2 has come a long way. Some of the community say the updates are slowing right down now as Tripwire work on other, more profitable things. However, please don't let this stop you from enjoying a blisteringly good time either solo, with randos on the interwebs, or with your buddies. Or maybe if you're a long time player, this video's prompted you to re-download it, even just for a game or two. The game goes on sale quite often, and none of the weapon DLC is really needed, but some of it can be quite cool if you really do want it, although it is a tad expensive. I'm down to play with anyone in the EU region if you want, but I warn you, I'm absolute trash. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, you are awesome. I'm really bad at self-promotion, but I know it's important to get anywhere in the game these days. So if you did enjoy this video, please go down and just give it a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, click that big red subscribe button. There's also one person who seemed to enjoy my stuff so much, she gave me money for it. That'll be Alexia on Patreon. Thank you again, Alexia. Alright, my coffee cup is empty. I need to address that. Bye for now.